David approached me and Emma and David independently, got us to meet. Emma and David had already been planning on doing their own theatrical adaptation of In Parenthesis. So they'd already done a lot of groundwork, having been something they'd been interested in doing for maybe 20 years.
Iain Bell actually sent me a DVD of some of his songs that he'd composed for the soprano Diana Damrau. And these were really beautiful songs.
Iain wanted to go through the whole libretto literally forensically, pick each little piece apart and understand it not just in the context of what we'd created, but in the context of the wider idea of the poem itself. He wanted to understand the musical background, the language that surrounded each different scene.
They talked me through every element of it because some of the language is quite intricate and it's dealing with themes and stories that lots of us might not be immediately aware of. So they taught me through that, and when I felt that I knew enough about the piece, I started work on it. Now this music is an interlude to suggest their departure, but also the rising of the moon. We hear da 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 da. We hear this rising motif throughout the next minute and a half, which then leads into Ball's huge aria within the piece, For All the Fear, based on this material. So this is just as something's rising, and you'll hear when the moon rises, everything becomes very bright, brilliant. Ball's aria that follows is about him from this dark night and this moon, deriving the strength to face death head on. So it's a moment of realization. He's facing his dark self. There we are. We have a full moon, and you can hear it shimmering in just a sec with some very high arpeggiated strings. That then moves down through the parts. He takes strength from the moon and accepts his own fate, which may lie ahead of him. And this is the big aria of the piece, 3 or 4 minutes long, solo tenor, and it's really evocative. We hear the brilliance of the moon coming through, shining down its beams, but we also hear this darkness that Ball's evoking and singing against. He's talking of being able to face coal black death head on.
In this piece, David Jones achieves, I think, an astonishing balance between a kind of comic, self-deprecating look at himself as a slightly incompetent soldier and a visionary who perceives himself to be taking part in some gigantic mythical encounter.
As well as being a young soldier, very clumsy, quite awkward, he's also able to see things that we can't see. He's able to have visions of ancient battles and wars that have gone on before.
When John Ball slips into these other worlds, other characters might revert to ancient languages like Brettonic or ancient Welsh or Latin. And Iain has also used very, very different musical language for those moments.
What was important with this piece is that we've got 2 very different sound worlds. We have a very brutal, martial, military sound world, and then we've got a very esoteric, very ethereal fantasy world. And what was important to me was that I was able to portray those both independently and then latterly in the piece when they come together.
So this is the final version of the libretto, and you'll notice that some sections are specifically in red and others are in black. The red was to denote this other mystical world. At the beginning, it's very, very infrequent, these sort of moments where he falls into this other world, but by the end of the piece, we can see from the text that other world has now completely subsumed the world of the temporal, the world of the real.
To portray that musically and vocally was a real challenge. When he's just this normal young soldier, this young private, he's a natural young lyric tenor. When he is having these visions, I took the opportunity to really take the idea of a Rossini tenor, a tenor capable of the greatest of flexibility and pitch register, and really made that something of my own.